Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 314.
Why are snakes so hard to fool? Try that again. Albert, why are snakes so hard to fool?
I don't know, why are they so hard to fool?
They have no legs to pull.
Oh, oh boy. that was almost funny, Julius, but thank you.
Almost funny. Oh, well, I tried.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so welcome back. This week we are talking about a game called Banish the Snakes, hence the snake joke. This is it's a game from GMT Games. It's not exactly a war game, but it's war game like-ish.
It's a war game. I've seen the pieces.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a game about bringing Christianity to Ireland, is what it is. And the title Banish the Snakes is a reference to St. Patrick, who has a reputation that he banished all the snakes from Ireland, and after him, there are no more snakes there ever again. The problem with that story is that there are also no snakes there before him, but that's okay. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this game. I got it from their P500 and backed it and all that, and it's a cool little game. It's a cooperative game, which is not normal for GMT. They don't normally make cooperative games. This is one of the few they have, maybe the first one even. So I was very excited to get it out. The style of gameplay is similar to a pandemic style game, which players do their stuff, and then the game likes to undo the stuff, and that goes back and forth until it's over. So yeah, there we go. There's our quick summary. This is a GMT Games game. Modern GMT games actually come with a mounted board, which is nice. They used to be paper boards. This has a mounted board with very nice artwork on it. I like the colors and the style and all that of it.
You mean the map is very nice?
Yeah, it's a very nice map.
Because there's not that much artwork.
On the map?
It's just a map.
It's just a map, but it works. It's very nice. I like the look of it. It's clean and it's empty. It doesn't need to be a lot on it because you're moving blocks around on regions, but it's a nice looking map. The board has a border around it. Where the title of the game is on the board, it looks like some parchment that's curled up at the bottom. It's just really well designed, I think.
That's fair.
Simple, pretty, and functional. Besides that, you get a couple decks of cards. You get a deck of cards for events. It includes cards for the players, cards of the saints. There's, I believe, 8 different saints you could pick from when you play. So it has quite a variety. These are actual saints that were in Ireland converting Christians and stuff at some point in time around St. Patrick. Each of the saints plays a little bit different, so it actually matters that there's so many in there. There's another set of the same saints because you can shuffle some into the deck. There's other cards too. We'll leave it at that. Besides that, there's a green die with a 4-leaf clover on it. It's a D6. There's plenty of wooden pieces, about 150 wooden bits total. These include cubes and discs and churches in different styles and blocks, like tall blocks in which you put stickers on them. And then it brings a lot of stickers. It's actually about 110 stickers. Actually, no. 110 blocks get stickers. And most of those get stickers on both sides. So when you get the game, you're going to be doing a lot of stickering at first.
I'm sure that's always fun.
And, it's not terrible. You sit there and you just kind of listen to a podcast or do something while you're doing that.
Don't you have to be somewhat attentive to make sure you're doing the right back and front?
Yeah, you do. They do line up. The stickers are set up so that the front and back are next to each other, and you just kind of do those in pairs. And you want to line them up and all that. So you're focusing on what you're doing, but it isn't super heavy focus, so you can do something while you're doing it. That's what I found. I was listening to podcasts. They're good size. Some of the things you put stickers on around, some are square. And so that's it for the components. Also a box. It's a big-ish box, about the size of like say Hallertau, one of the newer big Uwe Rosenberg boxes. Feast for Odin. Think about that. So there you go. That's the components. They all look nice. The cards all have nice artwork, drawings, and stuff. I don't think any of these are necessarily original artwork from different historical references, but I think it's stuff based on those, drawn in that style. For example, I was looking at pictures of St. Patrick online, and I found a couple that look similar to the box cover, but not exactly the same. So I got the impression that the artist used those as a model. So there we go. Rules, theme, or gameplay, Julius?
Let's do the rules.
Let's do rules. Okay. The rule book, GMT is getting so much better at rule books. They really have. It's no longer, well, at least this is a relatively light game, but it's not like 50 pages of uh note style rules with Roman numerals and all that. It feels much more like a regular Euro game kind of rulebook. Lots of pictures, text is large and easy to read. A picture of the board for the layout and all that. So easy to read, easy to follow. I would say it was all pretty clear. There's a couple questions where things got a little bit confusing in terms of when you're removing some of the cubes on the board and replacing them, or some of the blocks. It was a little vague on how that worked, and I had to think about it for a while before I quite understood what they meant. And also, there is an example book which helped with that.
An example book?
Yeah, an example of play. GMT generally does it. They'll always have two books: a rule book and an example of playbook. Or what do they call it? Maybe I got the wrong name.
But it's not a tutorial type thing.
It is a
It's not a
walkthrough.
learn to play book.
Well, sometimes I learn to play. In this case, it's just an example where it says, here's the setup, and the board was set up, and you got your four players, Bob and Joe and Jill and Mary or whoever, and on his first turn, Bob draws a card. It is this, and then these are the actions he takes, and it steps you through the first couple of rounds of the game or so. And if you want to play along, you could set up your board, play along, and then it'll say, okay, and then from here, the rest of the game went on, they tell you, and then you would just continue normally. So you could use that to learn, yes. I tend not to look at those too often. I tend to prefer to read the rules. I don't like the
I
tutorials.
didn't see that available online, so I didn't know that was in there.
It's called the playbook. That's what they call it. And it's got the example of play, and it does have a historical background section that tells you about the different saints and whatnot, which is interesting.
Out of curiosity, they use an interesting font in a large portion of the rulebook headings. Do you have any issues with that?
Let me look at it. Some of it, yeah, it's the word actions on item number 10. Okay, so it is outlined. Item 10 and 10.1. The 10.10.0, the heading is actions, but it kind of looks like um something. I don't know what it looks like. It's hard to make out.
It looks like it ends with HX. Yeah, I have
It
issues
does, and
with
the
the with
C doesn't look like a C. And yeah, so it's fancy and hard to read.
yeah, when you value the font being interesting over being readable, it's a red flag to me. But I
It kind
haven't
of
had
makes
the
you,
opportunity
yeah.
to play it, so
It kind of makes you say, does this heading actually even matter? If they decide to make it so hard to read. And you'll get used to it after a little bit. It's not too bad. The S's looks like X's and stuff, but I'm able to read it now. Now that I've spent a little bit figuring it out. It's actually kind of interesting. Like I can't make all the letters out in some of the words, but I know what they are because I can make out most of the letters. Anyway, that's only the headings. The actual rules are clear enough. The font is clear and easy to follow. It's only 14 pages. The index starts on page 14, or is on page 14 and 15, and so including the front and back cover, it's 16 pages. So yeah, pretty short for GMT. And actually, I mean, that's not that unusual for even a Euro game these days. That was the rules. Any questions about the rules or anything, Julius? Or any other comments other than the funny text?
nope. I'm excited to hear about the theme.
Okay, so the theme is about the bringing of Christianity to Ireland in the around 500, 400 to 500 AD, I guess. It's called Banish the Snakes on St. Patrick. St. Patrick is credited for bringing Christianity to Ireland. He wasn't the only saint that did that. Other saints were involved even before him and after him. But I think he gets the credit because he did the most work and really got the ball rolling, I think. And it's kind of neat because the rules when you I'm gonna jump way ahead. When you play the game, if you do really well, it tells you you've saved the world, and because you brought Christianity to Ireland, probably like handwriting and written word is saved in Europe. Because what was happening was this is going on as the Roman Empire was collapsing, right? So a lot of and the Roman Empire was Christian, so it was collapsing. Barbarian tribes and whatnot were coming in and taking over the Great Britain and mainland Europe and whatnot to some extent. So it was collapsing, and Ireland kind of became a bastion of Christianity. So so doing well, you get to save Christianity. That's sort of what the theme is about. The Does it come out in the game?
I mean, from what I'm reading, it sure seems to.
It does, yeah. All the cards have flavored text and pictures and artwork and all that, so I think it does come out in it pretty well. It does feel like you are spreading Christianity pretty well. You're converting people and flipping them over and converting Keen and whatnot, getting druids and converting them and sending them away from the game because they're irrelevant now that they're no longer druidic. So yeah, I think the theme's pretty good. I liked it. I enjoyed the theme in it. I found it interesting. I learned a little bit about the theme by playing the game. So I'd say it works well. So this game I already mentioned is sort of a pandemic style game. You know, players do good stuff, game does bad stuff type thing. It has a lot of similarities. It has some differences. The game is for 1 to 6 players, kind of a high number, I think. And they said we only stopped at 6 because of the component limit. It was really fun, no matter how many people we played with. I cannot imagine playing this with eight, like say 6 or 8 people, or something like that, because you'd have so few turns and so much time between turns. It wouldn't necessarily be that much fun
Well, I
if you
think
know
at
how to
that point
play
in time,
them.
once it's a co-op, you're supposed to remain involved in everyone's turn.
Yeah, but it's like playing D&D with a group of 6 people. You're gonna get to like swing your sword twice in the fight, and that's gonna take like 4 hours. That sort of thing. But I mean, it does work, because it is that style game. If you're playing solo, you probably want to play multiple characters, not just one. You can play just one. It says in there. I did not try that. I went straight to multiple characters. Playing one would have the usual issues of you can't really move around the whole board very quickly and do stuff in different areas, and then you lack some of the interaction between the characters that can happen. So, I played. I think I played 2 or 3 depending on the game. I never tend to do more than 3. The way the game works, you're playing on a map of Ireland. The map is divided into 4 regions. Each of the regions is then subdivided in either 2 or 3 areas. Each area has a population of peoples and a king. Each region has a chief. I'm sorry. Each region has a king that rules over the chiefs and the different areas. Each each area, besides the chief, also has a druid. And then there's also a high king that rules over all of Ireland. The high king at the where is it? At Tara. The
Does he go hiking?
He does not go. He does not go
He
hiking. He is
stays in the
hiking.
same spot the whole time?
Yeah, he's hiking in place.
Sorry,
he has
horrible
a
puns.
I enjoyed it. He has a high throne actually, which is pretty funny. The game brings for the kings, it brings a block, and each of the kings just sits on the block. So you can see it's got a throne. The high king has 2 blocks, so his throne is higher than the rest, and he stands out. It's kind of funny they did that, kind of neat, but it doesn't really have much functionality other than just to make it look neater, I guess. Um. Anyway, so here you've set up your board. You've got all these druids and people and chiefs and kings on the board. Chiefs and kings are all the same type of block, just that where they are on the map tells you what they are. The peoples are a little bit different. All the blocks have a number on them, and it can be a modifier when you try and convert them. The druids have it on one side, the people have it on one side, the kings have it on both sides. One side being a good number and the other one's a bad number. Your goal is to go around the board and convert everybody to Christianity. If you've converted all the people, not the kings, not the druids, just the people, you win the game. Now, the thing is, to convert people, they're affected by their chiefs. The chief has a modifier on him. If he is still pagan, that modifier is going to be negative and make it harder for you to convert the people. If you convert him to Christianity, the modifier is 0 or positive, so it's going to be easier to convert the people. Likewise, the converting the chief is affected by their kings in their region. So the modifier on the king affects how hard it is to convert the chief. And then the high king works the same. The modifier on the high keen affects how hard it is to convert the keens. So if you want to convert the people, you kind of want to start at the top, convert the high keen, then the keens, then the chiefs, and the people. It'll be much easier if you could do it in that order. However, only converting the people really matters for victory. The other one, the druids that I mentioned, they kind of have a hold on the religion. You really can't convert anybody if there's a druid counter there that is not yet revealed. What I mean by that, the backside of the druid has I guess, a holly leaf. Until you reveal him and see what his modifier is, you can't convert anybody else. Once you've revealed him and you see the modifier, you're welcome to try and convert anybody else. But those modifiers tend to be harsh. For example, the worst are a -6 modifier, and when you're rolling a d6, there's just no way you're going to succeed if the modifier is -6. So you want to convert him first, then convert the high key, and then the keens, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the idea of the game. The other thing you could do is you could move around the map. Each turn you get action points. Oh, I'm going to be jumping around the rules, aren't I? That's what I do in these talks. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I've got all sorts of notes, and yet I'm going to jump around. You've got each turn you have your actions. You're going to take actions which include converting either druids or keens or whatever. You can move around the map going from area to area. You could, if there is no druid, you could raise a church. And when you do that, you just put a little cube on that space where the druid used to be. If there's already a church there, you can make it bigger. And there's 4 different stages. From the little cube, it goes to a disc. From a disc, it goes to a kind of little bit bigger church that looks like a building, and then finally to a taller one I guess it's a cathedral. And there's lots of the little ones, very few of the big ones, and everything in between is somewhere in between. Having those are nice because they also give modifiers to help you convert, positive modifiers. There's other things that modify the games. I'm not going to get into all those, but they are there. On a typical turn, you're going to take your actions. You have a certain number of actions, generally up to 4, and your actions are going to be things like converting and whatnot. You could also take an action to prepare, I guess, you're preaching or something first, or talking to people before you take that role. So you could spend an action to convert to talk to them. That'll give you a +1 modifier. You could do it twice. I'll give you a +2 modifier. And you can do it up to 3 times if you have 4 actions. Then you'll take your action for rolling and add up all those modifiers and see if you succeeded or not. If it's a druid, you remove them off the board if you succeeded. If it's a high keen or a chief, you flip them over to the opposite side. If it's a person, you flip them over to the opposite side. If you still have actions, you could repeat and do stuff like this again. Once all the players have taken their turn, or all the characters have taken their turn, you then draw a card from the deck. Actually, that's really the first action, not the last action, but that's okay.
I'm shaking
Julius
my
is
head
shaking his head. But I was ready to do this Tuesday, but then we weren't able to record, and then I got really sick, and now I've got a bit of a head cold, so my head's a little flighty.
Yep, that's the reason why.
That's the only reason why.
I'll take the blame for Albert acting as he normally does and skipping all over the place instead of like proceeding through his notes in an organized fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's just how it goes. Anyway, so I've talked about what you do in your turn. Before your turn, you're gonna first draw the bad stuff card. It's kind of neat in this game because the bad stuff cards, each card on it has a little arrow on the bottom that's either towards the top or the bottom, and when that card affects the next card you play. So the next card, when you flip it over, you put it next to that one, and the arrow points to one of up to 5 events on the new card, and that's the event you do. So this way, each time you play, it's going to be very different. Just because you get the same cards aren't the same thing. Sometimes a card could be pretty bad. Sometimes it could be pretty good, just depending on the card before it.
They could have done that by having multiple cards, right?
Oh, but it would have been a lot more cards. And it's all thematic. So like if one of the cards is, say, about the king, you try and convert a king's son. The bad effect could be, oh, he got really mad, you did a terrible job, and he's actually hurt you physically, and you're taking some damage.
But the different effects are on a single card are all similar. It's just levels of badness in the same theme, is what you're saying.
In the same theme, yes, exactly.
Okay. I misunderstood that.
Yeah. So it does keep it tied by theme, which is kind of neat. And it's nice when it's kind of fun when you draw the new card and you say, "Oh man, I'm so glad this was at the good end of the spectrum because the bad end would have really been terrible right now." So it's kind of neat to be able to see that as you play actually. Anyway, those bad stuff could be often are things like people are getting you're removing people from the board. It says, "Oh, from this region, remove 2 people and replace them with new pagan people." Generally speaking, when you're removing people, you're first removing the ones that are already converted, and then the ones that are not converted. If you need to remove more, so generally speaking, the board is going to have you take off good cubes or easier bad cubes and replace them with new bad cubes, which may be harder. So that's one of the ways the board does it. It does other stuff, changing the keen around sometime. All these things basically mean you have to go back now and keep doing more conversions and more work of spreading the Christianity. And as you make progress, things go back. In that deck, you could also find good stuff though. Once in a while, you draw a saint, which will replace yours if yours dies. You could replace them with another saint if you have one tucked away that you drew from the deck earlier. You could also find a couple other good cards that let you cancel bad events and things like that. Another thing you could find is paganism in England increases. Basically, I told you at the beginning how like Rome had fallen and Christianity is on the decline in the United Kingdom. Every time you draw one of these cards, you advance a marker. As the marker goes through that track, it passes a couple different points, and each time it passes one of those points, you're going to add some new cards back into that deck and shuffle them up, and it's now a little meaner as different parts of region, as different regions in the United Kingdom or Great Britain, I guess, the main island, turn pagan. The other thing that could happen is that track advances. Once it reaches the last space, the game ends immediately, and then you're gonna have to check your score and see how you did. So that is basically the flow of the game. Draw a bad stuff happens card first, not last. Apply its effect, and then every player in order takes their actions, and then repeat the next turn. So very similar to other games of this style. The biggest difference is all the players go for every one bad stuff card. No, I think each player goes for each bad stuff card. I'm misremembering. Yeah, I'm misremembering. That makes more sense, honestly, because it's balanced that way, so that there's always the same number of good stuff and bad stuff in the game. Um, that that is the general gameplay. Like I said, you're going to play until the game ends, and it could end either because the paganism in Europe marker advanced to the last space, or because you completely converted all of Ireland to Catholic. If you converted all of Ireland, congratulations, you win with the at the highest level of victory. Basically, Europe is as it is in real life. Or if you didn't do that, then you check your score by counting how many people you converted, how many chiefs and kings you've converted, and things like that, and check the score track. And you did less well. Maybe you lost, maybe you won. It just depends. But things are not as good as they are in the modern world because of you. So there you go. That's sort of the way the game works. I hope that was clear for everybody.
Crystal.
Chris, I'm sure. All right. Are there any questions so far, Julius?
So you said that there's like different types of units and you have to capture them in a certain order or something like that?
Yeah, they're not units because it's not a war game. But yeah, your goal is to convert the people, right? The regular people. But to convert them, you want to convert the chiefs first, and before you convert the chiefs, you want to convert the kings first, and before you convert the kings, you want to convert the high chief, and before you could do anybody, you have to do the druids.
How easy is it to keep track of all of that?
Oh, it's pretty easy. It's all on the board. And all the markers are double sided, so you could see it very clearly what's what. There's no trouble looking around and seeing where there's a lot of paganism and where there's very little paganism and whatnot.
Okay.
I find it, yeah, it's very very simple to keep track. So there are things I really like about this game. Let me find my notes on that. I should have been reading my notes out loud to you people because they're so clear and concise and well written that I'm really impressed with it. So okay, so one of the interesting things about this game is your saint can die throughout the game. As you're playing, if you fail a row, you take some damage. It's not physical damage. It's I guess you're a little dejected that you're not doing so well. I forget what it was called, and I did not write down that word. you could take so much damage from these failed rolls, and events will also affect these your health. If you die, what happens is you now place a little marker on that space, a little cross, and from now on, any rolls you make, you have a +1 modifier, which is really nice. So actually, your character dying can make things easier for you. So sometimes you want him to die. Also, as you're taking the damage, little by little, you're gonna have fewer actions. So as you're weak, you're kind of thinking, "Oh man, this it would be helpful if this saint martyred himself and died, so that I could now get the benefit of him being having a cross there, some sort of monument to him, and then I get a brand new saint that's healthy and stronger and doing all his actions and some different abilities than what I had before." And so that is interesting because you're playing and you kind of don't want your character to die, but you also find that at some point it's convenient for you or beneficial for him to die at the right place and time. Excuse me. So that is an interesting concept in the game. I like that. I don't remember seeing that in other games.
How easy is it to keep track of all the pieces when you're going through that? Like to understand which one you need to get, what's next, things like that.
Oh, it's not bad. So you have a little player map for your that you have your card on, and you mark your actions on it. And when you draw one of those saints from the deck, you tuck them under the board, and you can see it there. And you can tuck up to like 3 cards. I think 4 if you're playing solo, or 2 and 3 if you're playing solo. So you see what you have there. If you don't have one there, then you're gonna flip your boat over, and then you have an acolyte that is not quite as powerful as a saint and doesn't have a special ability, but at least you have somebody to keep playing with until you draw a saint, or if somebody else has a saint, they could give you that card if you guys are in the same space, and then you could keep going. If you have an acolyte and that acolyte dies, the game ends immediately. And then you go and check the score. But I do like that a lot. I mentioned the cards. I really like how they work, and how what card came before it affects how mean the current card is. One thing I did not like here, some of the cards have a second effect or primary effect, whatever that happens besides the that one, and it's at the top of the card, right under the title. Because of the way it's there, and because of the way the text is, I often forget to see it. I just don't see it because I'm looking at the main body, and that effect doesn't really stand out on the card. It's enough to miss if you're not used to looking for it. My first few games, I think I just never saw it, and just didn't apply those. And those tended to be bad effects. So I was making things easier for myself. Still losing, but making it
Can't
easier
have that happen, now can you?
Didn't do much good. So, but yeah, so that is one issue I did have with the cards. Oh yeah, failing to convert one of those druids can really hurt. It could really, really make the game pretty hard to come back from. When you fail to convert I think it's called a doldum, gets put on that space now, and it
A
is a -1
doldrum?
modifier. I think that was the name.
Not a
DOLDM.
doldrum?
Nope, not a doldrum. Let me tell you what it is exactly. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, dolmen. DOLMEN, which I still don't know what that is. Some sort of druidic monument or something. I don't know. But you place that there, and now there's a -1 modifier. If you fail again, it's easier to fail now because of that modifier. If you fail again, you're gonna add a second dolmen. That's even harder again to succeed. So, and if you get in a situation like that with a -6 druid, one that was already hard to convert in the first place, things could really snowball and become really hard to convert that area. And I found that when that happened, I kind of had to give up with that area and go somewhere else until I had some way to increase my odds, maybe with a card that I had been able to tuck under my board, or a new saint that maybe had some benefits against the druids. One or two failures of that, and your chances of winning are very slim, I think. So I found that kind of frustrating, but that's okay because it kind of gives you something to work with, I think. I still enjoyed the game. It's a new challenge. And not am I going to win, but how well can I recover? I said I like it. It feels like Pandemic. I said that it is more complex than Pandemic. It's not painfully complex or anything. There's just more things and more types of things to deal with. Instead of just removing a cube, there's different types of cubes you got to remove, and the order you do them can matter and all that. And adding other things to the board can affect it also. So it is more complex than Pandemic, but similar enough that the comparison is going to be there. I already said the druid conversion is tricky, and pretty swingy, especially with one of those -6 druids. The way that the roles work, just to be clear, you're gonna roll a d6, and a druid is gonna give you a negative modifier, or any other pagan. Let's say it's a -3 modifier. If I'm rolling, the modifier is -3, and I roll my d6, and I get a 3. -3 plus 3 is 0. That is a failure. I need to have a positive result in the end. So I'd have to roll at least a 4 -3 to win, to win that roll. And anything else that modifies it again will modify it up or down, but that's how it works. And those failures can be so swingy, especially with druids, because they add those dolmens if you fail with them. The other comment is, because of that complexity, the game can feel chaotic from game to game. It's very different and whatnot, and some games feel like things are just going really well, and others are just really hard. And I guess it has a lot to do with the complexity, and b, the fact that you're rolling the die to decide the outcome. And a lot of it is managing that randomness, and you could definitely do that. When I played, and I'm gonna roll, the first thing I want to do in a space where we haven't converted anybody is spend 3 of my actions to improve my odds, and then roll, so I get a +3 modifier. And doing stuff like that really helps a lot with that complexity, but also means you're spending a lot more actions just for one roll. It's a little bit of a give and take. But that generally is the game. It's really fun. I liked it a lot. I've had fun with it. More complex. The one drawback maybe is that it's also longer than Pandemic. It's gonna say it's probably about 90 minutes, 2 hours to play.
I imagine GMT game would be longer.
Yeah, it surprises me how long it is every time, and I don't think it's necessarily just because I'm learning it. The learning process definitely made it take longer. But even once you've kind of grokked the game pretty well, and you're going quickly, it still can take a while, especially when you draw one of the event cards that say there is an attack or raid or something happens, and you need to switch um, the blocks on the board. You're gonna have to pull some of the blocks out. Say 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, maybe as many as 9 or 10 blocks. Take them off the board. Draw new blocks from the cup and put them back in those spaces, and then put the blocks you took off back into the cups. So that can slow things down. And I don't know if there's anything you could really do about that other than to be quicker with your hands, I guess. So yes, Julius, that is Banish the Snakes.
Out of curiosity, do you enjoy the theme?
Um, I I am not specifically moved by the theme. I thought it was an interesting theme, and I enjoyed learning about it. But it was a fine theme. Somebody like my wife, for example, will not play Pandemic because she is very uncomfortable with the theme of that game, even before the COVID outbreaks. But she might play something like this. So this would be good for somebody like that doesn't care at all for pandemics.
I see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a reaction to it, but I imagine that my reaction is born more of the fact that I'm Jewish, as opposed to anything else. So I was curious what your reaction to that was.
The theme didn't matter to me. It's a war game, like you said. It's a war game. The
The admission.
Do you find the theme turns you off, or
Yeah.
is interest? Okay, I could definitely see
Yeah,
that. I
it
mean,
does.
that is the one thing about the theme. It could definitely turn people off. I could see if you're not Christian, I think you would not like it. I know religious games in general can be very hit or miss because of things like that. There's a game that I'd like to cover someday, sooner or later, a victory point settle called AD 30 that was very controversial because in that game you're playing taking Christ through. Oh, I forgot. It's been so long since I played. I forgot exactly what you're doing, but you're kind of controlling Christ in the game, and I know people had issues with that because it could be very sacrilege to pretend to be God, right? That's not something people want to do, and so that game could be very off-putting if you have that mindset. So yeah, religious games in general, touchy hit or miss subject, and it's always interesting what's gonna come out and if it's gonna work or not.
I hear that. I mean, that's just where I was coming from, and I've certainly had that reaction to other games, both plus and minus. There have been a couple of games that have just left my shelf because they touched a little bit too close for me. I just felt uncomfortable about it.
Yeah,
And this is one that I don't have a positive feeling towards because of that thematic set, and that's just the way it
yeah,
is.
that makes sense. Yeah, well, I mean, and that's gonna be true about any game ultimately, right? The theme could could be a turn on or turn off for anybody. And
Yeah.
some themes just like, oh, I don't even want to go there. Just I don't like it.
But I was just curious how it worked with you.
Yeah. No, it was fine.
But I think there's one thing that's definitely a thematic miss for me.
Oh?
Yeah, there's no knights, because then you can't have a serpent in here.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, there is no knights.
So no serpent. Alrighty. Well, I think that about covers everything for us then, Albert.
All right. Thank you, Julius. Until next time.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalute on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.